The SS officers left. The blockadiste appeared, his face reflecting our collective weariness. It all went well, don't worry. Nothing will happen to anyone, not to anyone. He was still trying to smile. A poor, emaciated Jew questioned him anxiously, his voice trembling. But, sir, they did write me down. At that, the blockadiste vented his anger. What? Someone refused to take his word? What is it now? Perhaps you think I'm lying? I'm telling you once and for all, nothing will happen to you. Nothing. You just like to wallow in your despair, you fools. The bell rang, signaling that the selection had ended in the entire camp. With all my strength, I began to race towards Block 36. Midway, I met my father. He came towards me. So, did you pass? Yes. And you? Also. We were able to breathe again. My father had a present for me, a half ration of bread, bartered for something he had found at the depot, a piece of rubber that could be used as a repair for a shoe. The bell. It was already time to part, to go to bed. The bell regulated everything. It gave me orders, and I executed them blindly. I hated that bell. Whenever I happened to dream of a better world, I imagined a universe without a bell. A few days passed. We were no longer thinking about the selection. We went to work as usual and loaded the heavy stones onto the freight cars. The rations had grown smaller. That was the only change. We had risen at dawn, as we did every day. We had received our black coffee, our ration of bread. We were about to head to the work yard as always. The blockadiste came running. Let's have a moment of quiet. I have here a list of numbers. I shall read them to you. All those called will not go to work this morning. They will stay in the camp. Softly he read some 10 numbers. We understood. These were the numbers from the selection. Dr. Mengele had not forgotten. The blockadiste turned to go to his room. The 10 prisoners surrounded him, clinging to his clothes. Save us, you promised. We want to go to the depot. We are strong enough to work. We are good workers. We want. He tried to calm them, to reassure them about their fate, to explain to them that staying in the camp did not mean much, had no tragic significance. After all, I stay here every day. The argument was more than flimsy. He realized it and, without another word, locked himself in his room. The bell had just rung. Form ranks! Now, it no longer mattered that the work was hard. All that mattered was to be far from the block, far from the crucible of death, far from the center of hell. I saw my father running in my direction. Suddenly, I was afraid. What is happening? He was out of breath, hardly able to open his mouth. Me too, me too. They told me too to stay in the camp. They had recorded his number without his noticing. What are we going to do? I said anxiously. But it was he who tried to reassure me. It's not certain yet. There's still a chance. Today they will do another selection, a decisive one. I said nothing. He felt time was running out. He was speaking rapidly. He wanted to tell me so many things. His speech became confused. His voice was choked. He knew that I had to leave in a few moments. He was going to remain alone, so alone. Here, take this knife, he said. I won't need it any more. You may find it useful. Also, take this spoon. Don't sell it, quickly. Go ahead, take what I am giving you. My inheritance. Don't talk like that, father. I was on the verge of breaking into sobs. I don't want you to say such things. Keep the spoon and knife. You will need them as much as I. We will see each other tonight after work. He looked at me with his tired eyes, veiled by despair. He insisted. I am asking you. Take it. Do as I ask you, my son. Time is running out. Do as your father asks you. Our capo shouted the order to march. The commando headed towards the camp gate. Left, right. I was biting my lips. My father had remained near the block, leaning against a wall. Then he began to run, to try to catch up with us. Perhaps he had forgotten to tell me something, but we were marching too fast. Left, right. We were at the gate. We were being counted. Around us, the din of military music. Then we were outside. All day I plodded around like a sleepwalker. TB and Yossi would call out to me from time to time, trying to reassure me, as did the capo who had given me easier tasks that day. I felt sick at heart. How kindly they treated me, like an orphan, I thought. Even now my father is helping me. I myself didn't know whether I wanted the day to go by quickly or not. I was afraid of finding myself alone that evening. How good it would be to die right here. At last, we began the return journey. How I longed for an order to run. The military march, the gate, the camp. I ran towards Block 36. Were there still miracles on this earth? He was alive. He had passed the second selection. He had still proved his usefulness. I gave him back his knife and spoon. Akiba the drummer has left us, a victim of the selection. Lately, he had been wandering among us, his eyes glazed, telling everyone how weak he was. I can't go on, it's over. We tried to raise his spirits, but he wouldn't listen to anything we said. He just kept repeating that it was all over for him, that he could no longer fight. He had no more strength, no more faith. His eyes would suddenly go blank, leaving two gaping wounds, two wells of terror. He was not alone in having lost his faith during those days of selection. I knew a rabbi from a small town in Poland. He was old and bent, his lips constantly trembling. He was always praying in the block at work in the ranks. He recited entire pages from the Talmud, arguing with himself, asking and answering himself endless questions. One day he said to me, "It's over. God is no longer with us." And as though he regretted having uttered such words so coldly, so dryly, he added in his broken voice, "I know. No one has the right to say things like that. I know that very well. Man is too insignificant, too limited, to even try to comprehend God's mysterious ways. But what can someone like myself do? I'm neither a sage nor a just man. I am not a saint. I am a simple creature, of flesh and bone. I suffer hell in my soul and my flesh. I also have eyes, and I see what is being done here. Where is God's mercy? Where is God? How can I believe? How can anyone believe in this God of mercy?" Poor Akiba drummer. If only he could have kept his faith in God. If only he could have considered this suffering a divine test, he would not have been swept away by the selection. But as soon as he felt the first chinks in his faith, he lost all incentive to fight and opened the door to death. When the selection came, he was doomed from the start, offering his neck to the executioner, as it were. All he asked of us was, "In 3 days I will be gone. Say Kaddish for me." We promised. In 3 days, when we would see the smoke rising from the chimney, we would think of him. We would gather 10 men and hold a special service. All his friends would say Kaddish. Then he left in the direction of the hospital. His step was almost steady, and he never looked back. An ambulance was waiting to take him to Birkenau. There followed terrible days. We received more blows than food. The work was crushing, and 3 days after he left, we forgot to say Kaddish. Winter had arrived. The days become short, and the nights almost unbearable. From the first hours of dawn, a glacial wind lashed us like a whip. We were handed winter clothing, striped shirts that were a bit heavier. The veterans grabbed the opportunity for further sniggering. "Now you'll really get a taste of camp." We went off to work as usual, our bodies frozen. The stones were so cold that touching them, we felt that our hands would remain stuck. But we got used to that too. Christmas and New Year's, we did not work. We were treated to a slightly less transparent soup. Around the middle of January, my right foot began to swell from the cold. I could not stand on it. I went to the infirmary. The doctor, a great Jewish doctor, a prisoner like ourselves, was categorical. "We have to operate. If we wait, the toes and perhaps the leg will have to be amputated." That was all I needed. But I had no choice. The doctor had decided to operate, and there could be no discussion. In fact, I was rather glad that the decision had been his. They put me in a bed with white sheets. I had forgotten that people slept in sheets. Actually, being in the infirmary was not bad at all. We were entitled to good bread, a thicker soup. No more bell, no more roll call, no more work. From time to time, I was able to send a piece of bread to my father. Next to me lay a Hungarian Jew, suffering from dysentery. He was skin and bones. His eyes were dead. I could just hear his voice, the only indication that he was alive. Where did he get the strength to speak? Don't rejoice too soon, son. Here too there is a selection. In fact, more often than outside. Germany has no need of sick Jews. Germany has no need of me. When the next transport arrives, you'll have a new neighbor. Therefore listen to me. Leave the infirmary before the next election. These words, coming from the grave as it were, from a faceless shape, filled me with terror. True, the infirmary was very small, and if new patients were to arrive, room would have to be made. But then perhaps my faceless neighbor, afraid of being among the first displaced, simply wanted to get rid of me, to free my bed, to give himself a chance to survive. Perhaps he only wanted to frighten me. But then again, what if he was telling me the truth? I decided to wait and see.